I teach again in the Department of Earth, Environment, and Society. Some regulations for COVID regulations here say you can take your mask. If I'm far enough, I can take my mask off. Is everybody comfortable if I do that?
No.
That's
I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was gonna say, if anybody do feel embarrassed or anything, if you don't want me to take my mask off, I won't. All right, if we're good, let me know. I won't walk around. Well, like you, maybe, when I graduated as an undergraduate, back in the dark ages, right, 1981, I had a degree in biochemistry. So I went and I worked in a research lab after graduation in Connecticut, where I was on the 5th floor of a research facility trying to isolate it sounds exciting, the nickel binding proteins in rat kidneys. I would inject rats with radioactive nickel, let it course through their system, cut out their kidneys, mush them up, put them through a scintillation counter, and then HPLC to try to separate which proteins bound up nickel, because we were studying a disease, Legionnaire's disease, and we thought that it was hypernickelemia, too much nickel. It's about as exciting as you can imagine. In other words, not at all. Right? White lab coats, fluorescent lights, and I did that for a year, and I said, you know, this really isn't doing it for me.
So you're like a mad scientist?
So I what?
You're like a mad scientist?
That hasn't changed. Yeah, still am. Totally pivoted, and I joined the Peace Corps, and I went to the Congo. Then it was called Zaire, but basically this region into here, Democratic Republic of the Congo, to teach high school biology and chemistry in a small village in French. Right, so with their training program out to the village, I was a skinny white guy from New England, plopped down, and I can still, in my mind, see the doors of that plane open when it landed in Kinshasa. The heat that rolled off the tarmac, walking down the stairs and saying, I'm in a totally different place than I grew up, right? All your anchors are kind of cut. Food, language, everything was different. So I settled into my small village of Gungu in the region of Bandundu of Zaire, now Democratic Republic of the Congo, where I taught high school biology and chemistry for 2 years. And then you loved it or you hated it, and I loved it. So I stayed another 3 more years there in different regions of Zaire, working on other development issues. What I found was, while teaching kids how to use a microscope and biology and chemistry so they could pass their high school exams, which was important, some of the basic needs were more in agriculture, food production. So I came back, got a master's degree in agronomy in California, and went back for 3 more years working in Senegal, West Africa, Botswana, a couple of tours in Botswana, Burundi, Cameroon, so different parts of sub-Saharan Africa. So what I'd like to talk to you today is just an overview about my impressions of Africa in just different segments, right? So some of this is going to be about population growth, perhaps unique health issues that they face, recent scares with Ebola, for example, that you may remember. Some challenges that they have that are not unique to Africa, but maybe some that are. And as a world community, how should they be addressed? Because the UN is very cognizant of pulling up less economically developed countries to get them more developed and self-sustaining. So, is anybody here from Africa or been to Africa?
I'm from Africa.
Where are you from?
I'm from East and North Africa. East and North.
This is an old map. Let me get a more modern map. I'll get a modern map in a second. Anybody else from Africa? Where from?
Not from Africa, but I've been to Africa.
Yeah. You've been there?
Yeah.
Where have you been?
I've been to Kenya and Somalia.
Kenya and Somalia.
Yeah.
I've been to Liberia.
Liberia, west.
Ethiopia.
Where?
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, okay. And where else? Anybody? There's some great study abroads if you are interested. Senegal is just a magnificent place. Ghana, again, a very magnificent place to get the opportunity. Many others, you might have, go with your family or the opportunity to go on a safari or something like that. there are some challenges in some places that are, infrastructure is tough, and maybe some political situations are a little less stable, but I don't want you to come away with the impression that many people have that this is a nation, that this is a country. Many people, when I came back, said, well, say something in African. It's like, say something in European. I mean, what do you pick, right? Every country is different, has their own unique governments and challenges, etc. So, with that, just maybe 5 minutes, small groups, get into like 4, groups of 4 or so. You want to wheel yourself around and come up with a list of everything that you know when somebody says Africa, everything you know about Africa, all your preconceptions, let me put it that way. So why don't we do that right now? Just circle the wagons and just take 5 minutes.
I feel like the overall thought is like just developers here.
4 minutes, counting down.
What was the question, Professor?
I believe it was like, what are your impressions of it as a place overall?
Yeah, when somebody says just Africa, what do you think of? Like, what are the preconceptions or the ideas that come to mind?
Like specific things, like I don't know even. Yeah, I do too.
It's more like
Yeah.
Donations, like
Hunger.
I feel like this here is very like individual. More like
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stop right there, because I don't want to run out of time. Shoot me what'd you come up with? Think of Africa. How about this group right here, what'd you guys come? What comes to mind?
We thought of hot first, that was the first word we got. And our last word we got was culture.
Culture, and what's the first one?
Hot.
Pot.
Hot.
Hot, what was I gonna say? Pot. That's Colorado. How about you guys back there?
Our first impression was like, we think of natural resources, we think of wealth, we think of, everything that Africa has naturally, and then we said we thought about how, sometimes we think of chaos or whatever, just because it's hard to control everything that they have there and keeping everything they have there, but we thought of it as a beautiful place for the most part.
Yeah, there's a lot of natural resources.
Yeah.
But if you look at the United States, it's not all centralized either. I mean, you go to the southwestern United States, it's pretty much desert, the scarcity is water, that dictates it, right? And then you go up to Iowa, and they got corn as far as I can see, right? So the same thing with Africa, it's like anywhere else. There are some countries that just luckily their borders, there's, you know, gold, you know, there's much of the rare metals that are in your cell phones now come from Democratic Republic of the Congo and some other places. It's not equitably distributed throughout the population, but the wealth, but some countries just have a port, other countries are landlocked, and this is kind of, like everywhere else, right? Don't think of Africa as any different than anywhere else about its distribution of potential, I guess. Bless you, how about back here?
Out of the Nile.
Right, not,
So like lions, the safari.
right, safari, everybody thinks of like safari or, Jungle Book or Tarzan or, those, that kind of stuff. But certainly, the pyramids and the iconic tourist destinations. How about your group here in the middle?
You kind of talked about how massive it is and how difficult it is to traverse it all and how diverse it is and like how many different climates there are.
Yeah, that's a good one, climates. Because climate is what you get. You really can't change it, right, all that much. So that dictates it. So one of the, the biggest rainforest or jungle in the world, Amazon, right? The biggest river drainage in the world, Amazonian River, in west to east into the Atlantic. The second, Congo, right? Rainforest, and then the Congo into the Atlantic, right? Second by discharge. So sits on the equator. That's the climate. And we'll leave that there. So I want to pick some of this stuff apart. Now again, this is some of this is just demographic data. Some of it is my impressions. It's an old continent. All right. So if you think about it, it hasn't moved that much over the millennia from where it was kind of started. India took a great tour, right? It went clear up and still slamming into the belly of Asia, pushing up the Himalayas. But Africa's an old continent, so it's been rained on a lot. It has been sitting there a long time. So fairly intact, which imparts to it certain geographic properties, right? So this is a geography course. I'd like to start by just, what is the physical geography of Africa, all right? They have some pluses and minuses. No long linear mountain ranges. They have volcanoes, right? Some dormant, but think of Mount Kenya, Mount Kilimanjaro, right? They have rift valleys. In other words, some of it is still tearing apart, right? Kind of like the Red Sea. It's pulling apart a little bit. You have these long linear lakes. It sits on the equator, which means it rains a lot there, and then about 30 degrees north and south of that is pretty dry. So you have the Saharan desert. That's not small. That's about as big as the lower 48 United States, right? And then you have down, Botswana, Namibia, around that area, that you have the Kalahari, right? So this dictates a lot of different things. In the past, one of the best ways to get into the interior and for trade is by rivers, right? Most cities of the world developed on rivers because it's a great transport to the interior. It's defensible, right? If you live on one side, you got a river as a moat on the other side. It's great to get fresh water coming from one side and throw your waste down the other side. Unfortunately, Africa doesn't have a lot of navigable rivers from ocean to the interior. Right? I'll get to that in a second. So it has some challenges that maybe some other continents didn't have, but it has other challenges as well that other continents didn't have. Think colonialism, slavery. But this is the physical geography of Africa. So this is the equator, right? Drains most of the Congo Basin. It's raining somewhere here every day, which means a lot of water being pulsed out through the mouth, right, of the Congo or the Zaire River into the Atlantic. There's the Kalahari Basin here, Chad Basin, the basins in the north, and those are fairly dry. So there's no long linear mountain range like the Andes in South America or the Himalayas or something like that. It's a little more spotty. This is that crack. So postulated Madagascar cracked off, and plate tectonic movement, and that the same thing is happening here with these long linear lakes, right? It happened up here in the Red Sea, but now this is starting to separate. one of the great wonders of the world, natural wonders of the world. You probably have heard of Mount Kilimanjaro, the snows of Kilimanjaro, right? It's a mountain that kind of sits alone, but it's snow-capped and it's on the equator, right? So that dictates a lot of the microclimate all around that one particular place. Here's another great wonder of the world, right? Victoria Falls. People spend a lot of money to go there to see Vic Falls, right? And you can do goofy things like you can go kayaking, that bridge right there, you can go bungee jumping off of. In the past, I mean like 20, 30 years ago, if you did it naked, they'd let you do it for free. It's like, I don't know if I want to see anybody hanging upside down, but a tourist thing, you can fly over it, helicopters and stuff like that. And then maybe another thing you've heard about Africa in the media is origin, right? Origin of the human species here. Homo habilis. So genus Homo, we are genus Homo sapiens, that was thought that this guy, right, walked out of Africa back at a time when it was somewhat hospitable to pass up through, maybe the Nile tract, but up through the Sahara to Europe. Homo habilis. Some stayed behind, some walked to Europe. Those ones that ended up in Europe evolved into Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals, right? The ones that stayed behind, Homo sapiens. And then they left Africa, came up to Asia, come up to Europe, met Neanderthals in Europe. If you are from European ancestry, you probably have 1 or 2% Neanderthal DNA in you. If you were from African ancestry or Asian ancestry, you probably don't. Yeah.
So how do we know about all this?
Well, you can take a whole course in this through artifacts, right? So some of it's logical. In other words, if you were small and tasty, and you didn't have claws or fangs, you needed either protection. Protection comes either from back up in the trees, right? But also from groups, right? So if you stayed in groups, and it's thought that these groups developed in this transitional zone of savanna, so thorn tree grasslands. So the trees go back for protection, the grasslands to follow the herds. If rains come and go, you're following those herds with, that's your food supply. If you want to travel fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a group. So if you look at other pre-hominids, they're usually much more simian-like. So bigger bellies, maybe more vegetarian diet. But once we were able to get a mixed diet, we're able to slim down, lose the big belly, be more upright, walk, travel farther, right? So these guys eventually became beachcombers, right? So if you look at the diaspora out of Africa, around the world, of hominids anyway, usually they follow the beaches. That was the best place because few things to eat you and a lot of things for you to eat. Right? So not as many bone fragments and things like this, but they can trace and date other types of artifacts. So, out of Africa. What makes Africa maybe unique, unlike other continents? If you look at the world, most land masses are in the northern hemisphere, not the southern hemisphere. Those are in the northern hemisphere usually have mountain ranges, right, which mess stuff up, except for Africa. So it's a perfect poster child for always wet, always hot, drying out, and then at the ends you have more of a Mediterranean climate. So it's kind of the perfect climate model. This is why there are deserts. 30 degrees north, 30 degrees south. Heating at the equator, hot, warm air rises. As it rises, it cools, drops some moisture right back down where it got it from. Your rainforest is there at the equator. But now that air at the upper altitude is hot, but it's dry. It moves poleward and descends like a hair dryer on the surface about 30 degrees north and south, right? Desiccating that surface, and it doesn't rain all that much. So this is why about 30 degrees north and south you have these major deserts in Africa. That's just geography. Same thing here. You have the rainforest drying out in bands as you move north and south of that. All right. So those countries that are maybe established in landlocked, no ports, no major river systems, in dry areas, cannot, just like just like any animal anywhere, carrying capacity, they can't support huge populations. They may not have a robust economy because they don't have a port. They don't have a lot of goods on this to barter on the world stage, right? That other people want something unique, unless they have something unique, right? So many of these countries don't have anything. Other ones have a lot. Botswana, diamonds. Democratic Republic of the Congo, rare metals. The uranium for the bombs of World War II came from there, right? The old Belgian Congo. Gold, right? Otherwise, you're going to have other unique things like ivory, right, out of the world market. But there's a ban on that. So it's a complicated story, but it all traces back to your geography. Pulsing back this, these are just shots of different types of climates as you dry out. But this is kind of where we started. And as you work poleward, right, away from the equator, you're drying things out. Why was there such a huge civilization here in Egypt, though, right? One, we had to know it was there. There's got to be something left behind. If it was in the jungle, it's either going to get covered up or it's going to rot away if it's organic. It's because it was on the Nile, right? So you had the floodplain of the Nile. It's like a ribbon of life, right through the desert sands there. Allowed for this particular civilization to leave these remnants behind. So those are behind. Many other places don't have this. Namibia, for example, drifting sand dunes. We either covered everything up if there anything was there or never got a toll. Historical background. We tend to think of European history or the Mayans, but there are some great kingdoms in Africa, some of which are still exist even post-colonial times. Ghana, for example. Obviously the name Ghana for the country there, but other ones. The Bangola Balozi, the Balunda, the Bakongo, Baluba are still there. Great Zimbabwe, Lesotho, the Hosa down in South Africa, right? Ethiopia. Many of these are still, many of these kind of gone, some cultures gone by the wayside, but many of these are still intact. This one you may have heard of, Timbuktu, right? Right now it's thought to be, wow, it's far away. It's like, man, he's off in Timbuktu, right? Like it's far away. Well, it used to be on a crossroads of trade, and it's a site of learning. There are still families there with, documents that, because it's so arid, are still have rotted away, of medicine and astronomy, and quite a seat of learning there that are preserved over this time. It was a repository of knowledge here for the region. Great Zimbabwe is another example. The only reason we know this here is because some of the things that rotted away could have rotted away, but they built some things in stone, which are left behind. Kind of like the Mayas. The only reason we know, the Mayan Empire was there was by some of the hard remnants that were left behind. But this showed an organization that was beyond just pastoral life. This was, quite a good organization there that isn't exactly exist anymore, but we know that there was some type of organization there in the past. Now, other influences on the African from outside, right? This is the thing. Everybody's influenced from the outside by somebody, but they had some other influences. So the Islamic influence from the north can certainly be felt, and there's a certain amount of line here, because this is obviously just by trade and other things. So, trade from the east, and then certainly coming down from the north. There are great Islamic influences in Africa. Other influences that come to mind, nobody really mentioned, was colonialism. It was hard to get into the interior, like the old Livingston, I presume, dark Africa. It was mainly because you couldn't get into the interior very easily. None of the rivers really went into the interior. The Congo River, which flowed right out here, right at the mouth, has a bunch of rocks. So even though it's a good navigable river upstream, right there you couldn't bring seafaring vessels in. When the when the Belgians came in, they built a little railroad around it, right? So that you can come in, unload, bring it around, load it back up. But anytime you get a nick point, that's basically a hardship that you can't easily get into the interior. So a lot of these Western influences were trying to get into the interior, to get the goodies, right? To get the gold. the animals, the exotic animals, the ivory, right? And then certainly with slavery, the people. So this was carved up like a turkey. This was carved up. And unfortunately, if you look at some of these borders, even back here, those are still the borders today. And it's given them no great benefit and mostly trouble. It would be much better if they all would sit down and say, you know, let's just get rid of some of these fictitious borders that colonialists left us with and get back to our normal divisions of tribes. But it hasn't happened. So after the Berlin Conference, Congo Free State was given to the King of Belgium. The rest of it was carved up. West Africa largely went to the French. East Africa largely went to the English. Italians had a run in some places, Germans, Portugal. But you know, they switched hands as wars, as external wars happened. Then you get up to outbreak of World War II here. There's the Belgian Congo. This looks a lot like some of the current borders of some of these countries. Post-colonial, now we have this, right? So why do I say this is problematic? I was stationed for a couple of years right about here, right, very close to the Angolan border. In the same tribe, the Bachokwe were all in this region here, and they would cross the border because they were all family, right? But technically, Angola was a Portuguese-speaking country, and this was Belgium, so it was a French-speaking country. So the official languages were different, right? But that didn't matter because they all spoke Kichokwe. But they forcibly went across the borders. It would have been better if you just kind of said, let's keep the tribes together and redivide this, but that didn't happen. One of the other influences on Africa from the outside was obviously the slave trade. So much of this went out, right, ports of West Africa. Why this particular pattern? You can take a whole course on this. Remember, this was the days of sailing ships and not self-powered ships. They had to have a tailwind. So generally around the equator, wind not right on the equator, but just scooch either side of the equator, here you have winds that blow from the east to the west. So think about this pattern, right? This clockwise pattern in the North Atlantic. You catch a tailwind, it blows you over to your plantations here, where you can unload slaves to work it, because that work is hard and all the people from Europe don't want to do it, right? Gather together whatever's there, the gold, the cinnamon, the pepper, whatever it might be, tack your way up the coast, right, to catch the tailwinds going from west to east, right? So where does our weather come from here? It comes from the Dakotas, from the west. You want to get that as your tailwind to blow you back, and your journey's complete. You make that big circle. Where there are a lot of shipwrecks at this time, that tacking, trying to go from the tailwind from the east to the tailwind from the west, going up the coast here. So you have this as the primary slave trade. Gorée Island, West Africa. This is Senegal. It's the westernmost point in Africa. There's the nose of it. It looks kind of like a lion here. That's the Gambia that sticks into it like a finger. But that off this shore here is Gorée Island. It's a World Heritage Site right now. But that was an island, and look, it's a fort, it's fortifications. Slaves were property and they were expensive. So you brought them in there and you held them until a boat came up to buy them. So a fort was there to protect your asset, and this was the slave trade house. Slaves were kept up top in back rooms, marched down these two staircases on the image on the left, right? Sold in the central courtyard, and then out this door. There's a door here, I think I have another shot of it. They would put a plank, yeah, there it is, the door of no return. So you went out that little door after you're sold onto a plank, and you're off to the West. You're off to the quote unquote new world. This is some shots that I took when I lived there. So Gorée Island is now a World Heritage Site. You can tour this, but this was there for hundreds. This is a long-term investment here on Gorée Island off Senegal. So all slaves were brought in from all parts here to be sold, and then off they went. Food. Everybody else think about food. How many people are in the world right now? What's the world population?
Isn't like 7 million around there?
How many?
Like 7 million around there.
Yeah, a little more than north of 7 billion. I was born 1958, and there were a little over 3 billion people. So right now, probably before some of you graduate, it's gonna hit 8 billion, right? So we're 8 billion people. 2050, 9 billion. 2100, so the end of the century, 11 billion people. So when it always comes back to how are you gonna clothe, feed, etc., especially the feed, because, you know, we need to breathe, you know, about every couple of seconds. We need to drink, but we need to eat every day. It's not like you can say, you know, we'll eat next week, right? No, we need to eat every day. So with every one of these bodies comes 2 hands to work, yes, but also a mouth to feed. And that's a struggle. It's getting better, but that's still a struggle. These are some foods. I'll just go through some foods. This is me back when I had a cheesy mustache, chowing down. And this was in Zaire. It was very communal eating. Kind of like if you go to an Ethiopian restaurant now, you get couscous or something, or a flatbread, and you all kind of sit around and pinch it off and eat it. Yeah, very communal, right? Same thing there. So you have different foods that you all sit around and eat communally. Nobody has their own plate. You all just kind of share it. So whatever basically they can grow. In some areas, in this particular area, protein was a little bit scarce, so you might be eating some non-Western diet protein sources, let me put it that way. But a lot of things could grow, right? So hunting was a big thing, not for big animals. Those were mostly hunted out like elephants. Sometimes they get a hippo, dik-dik, or an antelope, etc. But, you know, cat, rat, that's a pangolin, or spiny anteater. Snakes, birds, bats, rats, cats, guinea pig, anything, in Zaire, everything but frog legs. They wouldn't eat frogs because they thought it made you go sterile. So frogs are off the table, but almost everything else would end up in the stew pot, right? This is from Senegal, West Africa. Fishing is a big one if you're near the coast. It's a good source of protein. What isn't bought at the fish market that day is usually dried and then shipped to the interior or exchanged for things in the interior. So it's a great barter system, back and forth. Water, again, if you have surface water, that's great. If you don't, it's well water. So this was a shot in Senegal, hand dug, very deep well, as you can imagine. These kids have to go out sometimes a couple of times a day to pull enough water for the family, because with no rainfall replenishing it, they gotta wait for more of that ancient groundwater to kind of seep in there, right? A more modern one would be this, which is a lot more protected from, you know, disease or something getting into it. But if you're in the surface water, generally you'd pick a spot where people wouldn't bathe. So if a stream comes in, you would say you're drinking water here, women bathe here, men bathe here, right? And you have that division there that keeps your water source very clean. Challenges. Some challenges, these aren't unique to Africa, but they seem to be not being resolved all that quickly there. Environmental, infrastructure, population, and health. So let's take them one at a time. Population. Even in the United States, how many of you are going to go back to being on a farm? Probably very few. The goodies are in the cities, right? That's where the nice stuff is. That's where the schools and hospitals and sports and movies and food and dynamics are, right? Not out in the rural areas. Same thing here. People don't want to be in the rural areas that much anymore. They're going towards cities for the promise of a good life. But some of these cities, you can see, were never designed or meant to hold that many people. Cairo is groaning under the weight of the people that are trying to go to Cairo, as is Mexico City, right? Some of these areas, the city is the salvation, especially perhaps with climate change. We're going to have some climate refugees, but growing populations and moving populations is the name of the game, right? Not just in Africa, but around the world. So this is the problem. We're about almost 8 billion people now. They're not equally distributed around the planet, and certainly not equally distributed in any one country. Some of the highest fertility rates are still in Africa. Some countries are shrinking. Poland, Italy, Russia, they're just not, there aren't enough Italians making more Italians, right? Their population is growing. There are more people dying than being born that are Italian. Some other countries, there are more people being born than are dying. And that's not a bad story, right? We don't want infant mortality to be the limiting factor on a population growth. That's a tragic, right? That's tragic. So you have to look at the women. How many babies does a woman have in her lifetime? Men don't count. It's the total fertility rates. It's the number of children that are being born. In my family, I've got 2 kids, a boy and a girl. So when my wife and I die, the 2 kids take our place, and there's 0 population growth. If you have more than 2 kids and they survive, you have augmented the population, all right? If you only have 1 kid, you decrease the population. And it seems like through a variety of factors that Africa still hasn't quite got a handle on its total population growth. Some of these are in their control and some of them aren't. For example, you don't have to worry about a Social Security net here. There's Social Security. So even if you're destitute, there are things that will take care of you. In many countries, again, not just in Africa, your kids are your Social Security. If you don't have kids, who's going to take care of you in your old age? Because the government can't. So you're going to make sure you have kids. If there's high infant mortality rate, you're going to make sure you have more kids, because you can count on a couple of them dying. You want at least some of them to survive and make it to take care of you when you get old, right? Plus, if you're more agrarian, many hands make light work, and on the farm, you need to work, right? You can't pay for it, you need family. So all of this, it's not unique there, but it seems like some of the highest fertility rates are in Africa. I'm going to play this quick video clip, and it'll explain this a little bit more about not where we are now, but where we're going, and why Africa seems to be having some more challenges than other developing nations. Listen.
There you have the world, and here are the 7 billion. Now, out of the 7 billion, 1 live in the Americas, North and South together. 1 in Europe, 1 in Africa, and 4 in Asia. So this is now, but how to remember this? I have a very simple way of remembering this. I put up the numbers like this, and then I say, this is the PIN code of the world, 1114. Now, what will happen up to mid-century? Let me know fairly well. Europe, no increase. In fact, the European population is decreasing. In America, a little more people, mainly retired people in Latin America, so it makes no difference. It's more Muslims. In Asia, we will have 1 billion more. And then the population growth in Asia as well. In Africa, in the next 40 years, the population will double to 2 billion. Now, to the end of the century, well, we know quite well, no more people in Europe, no more in America, no more in Asia, but Africa is set, as we have data today, for another doubling. So there will be 4 billion in Africa. The 2100, and probably the final PIN code, will be 1145. So in 2100, there will be quite a different world. The people who live in what I call the Old West, in West Europe and North America, will by then be less than 10% of the world population. 80% of the world population will be living in Asia and Africa. But will there be resources enough to sustain them? Well, this will be a huge challenge, and nothing will come automatic.
Colonization 2.0.
But, Mike,
Let me pop back to this here. All right, China, you may have heard 1 child. Yeah.
Why does he think that the Americans aren't gonna grow up? So what's the reason behind that?
Because our population's already shrinking as it is now. We haven't grown. Africa, for example, between 94 and 2014 doubled its population in 20 years. Whereas we, even in the United States, we're shrinking. How are we going to fill that gap? How is Italy filling that gap? By immigration, right? But then the people who come in and say, well, they don't look like us, right? They're not Italian. They don't have the same food or dress or language or religion. I mean, there's going to be a little friction here that's going to happen. But as far as overall population, first, we've already hit 2 billion children. There are 2 billion children in the world, and that hasn't changed for many decades. So they postulate that that's not going to change. We're going to hit 11 billion by the end of the century, just by as those 2 billion grow older and they have 2 billion kids of their own, and inevitably will fill up of adults, right? We're also living longer, so there's going to be a top block there of about 1 billion that are old people. North and South America really are growing, as is Asia. Think about China, or Asia in general. If you drew a circle right around here, that's about half the population of the world right now lives within that circle. They must be doing something right, because they're generally being able to feed their people. The Green Revolution and rice in India or whatever. But China put on 1 child one family policy. They took that away. Recently, they took it away and said up to 3 children. They're worried about getting old before they get rich. They still have a lot of pensions to pay for old people, and they don't have enough young kids because of that policy to take care of the old people. So they want them to have more kids, even though the population is blossoming. But it's not going to grow that much. India is probably going to surpass. But their population is coming down. But it's going from 1 to 4 by the end of the century in Africa right now. And if you hear some challenges in Africa, which is 1 billion there, quadruple that, I think this is where the UN is really worried more about Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, than it is about other parts of the world, being able to meet the basic needs of their people. So going back to some of these regional densities, some are big countries with not a lot of people in them, right? That's just geography, and that's just how regions are divided. But look at Burundi and Rwanda. High population densities, 2 little landlocked countries in the Ruwenzori Mountains, right? You plant a walking stick and it can grow there. They have great potential for growth, right? And really just Hutus and Tutsis. There's very similar dialects of Kinyarwanda and Kirundi. But we all know with 93, 94, the Rwandan genocide, and which also spilled over into Burundi as well, with population pressures and old grudges. Yeah.
I saw a movie about the Rwandan genocide, Hotel Rwanda. Have you seen that?
No.
It was Professor Boyd Gillen, St. Thomas.
What's the name of the movie?
Hotel Rwanda.
Oh yeah, that's been out for a while. Yeah, I haven't seen it actually. I was in Burundi. A side note: I lived in Burundi just before this. I had a 6-month contract there, working with Jane Goodall Institute, trying to protect chimpanzees, and I had come from Zaire, where if somebody saw you, and of course I stuck out like a sore thumb. I'm a white guy, right? I've been in villages with never seen a white people before. Little kids would come up to me and shake my hand and look at it to see if any of the white came off, right? Or they'd touch my hair because I've never seen straight hair before. But if somebody saw you, first person, I've been in villages where like half the mamas would grab the babies, run away because they weren't sure what you were, and another half would run up to you and invite you in to eat. As soon as somebody invited you in to eat, the next one wanted to, the next one wanted to. After a while, you would like purposely, like if you had to get somewhere, like go around villages because you would never get anywhere you want to go. By the end of the day, it would be hours later, you were stuffed full, you were drunk, and you still had the rest of your day. It was very hospitable. Senegal was the same way. Tehran was so hospitable to strangers. And then I get over to Burundi, and in my 6 months there, I never saw the inside of a Burundian's house. I was never invited over. It was before I was even allowed into the country. They wanted a police report from my hometown, which I hadn't lived in like 20 years, to say that I wasn't a criminal. They were very skeptical of outsiders, right? And other ones not so much. You kind of knew something was brewing, some tension was there. Yeah, please.
So here's the thing though, like, kind of touch on everything you're talking about. At this point, a lot of different Africans, a lot of African countries realized exactly what happened after the gunpowder revolution and how it affected them on the long term. So now, one of the things that you have in a lot of countries is they are literally, I would say it's an animosity towards Europeans. So what you said in Burundi 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that's only got much, much worse in a lot of countries. And in a sense, you can't really blame them because everything that happened the way it did. And to this point, most of the wars that are happening within Africa, from places like Ethiopia, Somalia, just within East Africa, like you mentioned Burundi, are basically colonial powers putting a puppet government in power. So kind of looking at that, and you're talking about the next 20 years or 30 years, 40 years, I wanted to ask you a question to you. What do you think is going to happen within the next near future, or within the next, let's say, 2050?
Well, this is my view. that's been going on for a while. When I was in Zaire, the president was Mobutu Sese Seko Kukugobenda Wazabanga, right? He was put in, he was a lieutenant in the Belgian. When the Belgians left, there was some fighting in there. The CIA picked him and said, "You're our guy. This is the Cold War between the US and the Soviets, right? We had bases in southern Zaire to shuttle arms over to Angola, who were more aligned with the Soviets. Radio Moscow and Voice of America, two propaganda tools that were beamed out, because that was one way to get information to populace that either can't read or doesn't have access to books, but they can at least listen to the radio. This has been going on for a long time. Locals, they always say the adage, when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. They have been the grass for a long time. I hope that is over. That as we distance ourselves from colonialism, as we distance ourselves from the Cold War, and more globalization, more information, more literacy, better health, better infrastructure, transportation, better opportunities, that there'd be a little bit less beholden to some of the ideals of the past. So what, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, I get heartened by some of the progress that many of these countries have made, but I don't know. It's still too easy to tamper. You mentioned the riches that were there. There's still. Where are all these countries? China, I have to pick on a little bit, especially looking to find the raw materials that they need. They're looking to Africa. They're looking to Africa as a breadbasket, as the pantry for extraction.
Absolutely, that's something that's understood, well understood, but also from the perspective of the Mediterranean. Not just that, but if you heard what happened that's one part of it. If you heard what happened in Texas the other day with the Haitians and whatnot.
Yeah.
You kind of see the trend that.
Yeah, I don't see. That's where, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I see that is where it's going to get worse. The migration issue, climate refugees, migration issue. I mean, it's already. I mean, if you're looking at, here, we're giving third shots of COVID vaccine now, right? Boosters, and many places in Africa haven't gotten their first yet. So, yeah, this. Again, let's put density aside and start looking at some of the factors that are affecting some of this movement around. Yeah, they're having high birth rates, some of the growth is going to happen in Africa, but it's this migration, internal and external migration right now. I think we're seeing the effects on our southern border. Build the wall, make Mexico pay for it. Certainly the Haitians in Texas last week, but that's just a snapshot in the news. This is going to keep coming. And same thing with Africa towards Europe, towards the EU, Italy, or wherever they happen to land. I see this is getting worse before it gets better. I don't know how we're going to deal with this. Do you have any ideas?
Me?
Yeah.
I think that in some shape, form, or way, within our lifetime, within this generation's lifetimes, there's going to have to be something that changes drastically. Just not even from another perspective, let's just look at it from a climate perspective. We have 10 years, just this year, this summer, we had a hurricane come through the south and go all the way to New York, inland. And hurricanes are things that use water, they need ocean currents and whatnot. So this one was so powerful that it literally swept the whole United States. That keeps happening. Or let's just say this winter we have, just like last winter, we don't have that much of a winter. Winter starts in January or February. So I feel like that's really going to affect not just the United States or the Western world, but the whole world in a sense.
I think you're right. The climate, why would somebody leave where they've grown up, where their ancestors are, where people know them, they speak their language, their culture is there, to go to somewhere where they know that they're not wanted?
But that's the thing.
unless it's desperation.
People don't ask those questions. People, from my perspective, I'm new to the Midwest. I've only been here 3 years. I go here for college, strictly college. I can't wait to leave. So, from my perspective, I've never experienced like a culture shock worse than this place, and that's because people here, like, for the most part, they're untraveled. They don't really understand any culture besides Midwestern. I wouldn't even say American culture. They don't understand any culture besides passive aggressiveness and Minnesota nice and all this other bullshit. But just kind of going off of that, I feel like that's a question that a lot of people don't ask themselves. Why would these people leave somewhere where their fathers have been for generations, where they're from, where they speak the language, where they understand everything, and come forward, seek a better life? What makes a person want to do that? What makes a person go out of his way to do that? And not just that, but what made your European ancestors? Because not everyone came here on the Mayflower. There's a lot of Scandinavians here, there's a lot of people who are from Sweden, all of that. What made your ancestors do? So I feel like people need to learn more about themselves and their history.
That's true.
Essence, really.
Irish, mine came here because of the potato famine, right? In Ireland, and we couldn't live there anymore, they hoped a better life here. But when the Irish came here, it's like Irish not wanted, right? You gotta be,
And now it's blacks not wanted. Times change.
yeah, well then Chinese or Italians or whatever, it does change. But, yeah, migration, internally though, it seems like that, many people heading for cities, just like here, right? People are heading for cities, but can cities support them? A few other, we can talk about that topic for a long time. Other challenges, again, it's just not unique. Think Zika, right? Zika, came from the south and has its own hazards. But many diseases are endemic in Africa, as they are elsewhere. That if you think about it, okay, malaria is around the world because there's certain mosquitoes that transmit malaria. If our country doesn't have to spend money to combat malaria, we can spend money to build better hospitals or childhood vaccination programs or roads or schools, whatever it might be. But if you have to take a certain portion of your budget to combat these diseases, you're not getting ahead. So these are some of the diseases that are, again, not just in Africa, but many places in Africa have to struggle with. And this is a big killer. It's malaria, transmitted by mosquito, and it's a little parasite that goes in your red blood cells, which then burst your red blood cells, and you come down with fevers, chills, and in some cases, death, right? So this is where it is endemic, right? But again, this could change with climate change. Those mosquitoes could be back up in the United States, but this takes a toll on public health systems. Guinea worm, yeah.
When it comes to like treatment of malaria, there are like a lot of people there, can't you cure it in some cases, or like get rid of it?
They've been working on a vaccine for 30 years and they're still working on it. It's hard, it's not like a virus. It's
If
a
you
parasite.
so it's just basically if you get it like less bad than.
Well, the treatment for it is chloroquine phosphate. So you take 500 milligrams of chloroquine phosphate once a week. And what that does, when you get bit, it goes and hangs out in your liver. But when it comes out to your bloodstream, the chloroquine phosphate kills it at that stage, but it's still in you. When you leave a country, you can take another pill called Precolonial, which will knock it out of your liver. There's no sense in taking that in country because the next mosquito will bite you, we'll just put it back there. So it's not a treatment necessarily, but it knocks it back so you don't get the symptoms.
So why?
If you have access to it.
That's it, okay.
If you have access to it. And then everything costs, right? And then a distribution problem. Guinea worm, I'll swing by, by. This one is this close, right? Kind of like we're this close to solving polio. We're this close to eradicating guinea worms in the population. HIV/AIDS is prevalent there as it is in many countries of the world. It's thought to be a mutated green monkey virus, and maybe it started there, maybe it didn't, but it's endemic in many places now. So again, a lot of your public health monies are going to treating some of these things, and it could be put to better use if this wasn't on the landscape. Cholera is another thing that just kind of pops up wherever there's tainted drinking water. Ebola is a different thing. Ebola came from Zaire, up in the Ebola region, up and through here, is some of the earliest cases that was found. It's a heinous disease. It's almost 90% fatality. Imagine if this was COVID, it would be almost like an extinction level event. Or if this was airborne, it would be almost an extinction level event. It's hard to transmit, but once you get it, it's hard to treat, right? So why didn't it spread before? It's like once it flared up, it's still there. There'll be another outbreak of Ebola. It's not gone off the planet. It's that when you get a flare up, nobody traveled anywhere. Everybody there that got it died, and it didn't spread. But now with international or national transportation, they can get on a plane asymptomatic and spread it around. So many countries are really looking at this one as kind of the next pandemic is, and if it mutates beyond this, that's much more of a concern, it's much more deadly. Life expectancy is a consequence for all these things, malnutrition, environment. So somebody mentioned environment. Forest clearing is going on. Again, Chinese are looking at this, other countries are. Certainly many countries have for the teak, for the ebony, for whatever it might be. But internally, what are you going to sell on the world marketplace that the world wants? If it's something unique, you can make money. If it's not, well, every place can grow, a lot of places can grow corn, right? So that's not that unique. They need, some of these countries, especially with landlocked, need money, right? One of the ways to get money is through tourism, right? Ecotourism. Back in the day, it was like elephant hunters, go shoot an elephant, hang, or a lion hanging on your wall. Now it's more take pictures. So people know this. And ecotourism is big business. You can go there and everybody in the local community profits from people. Because you can go to Australia, that's a long ways to go. What are you going to see? You're going to see, good luck trying to see a platypus or a koala, right? You go to Africa, you're going to see all these big things, right? But there's nothing unique about North America that people are going to come here to see. But Africa, yeah, they can get some money there for hard currency. So they're very well protected. Some of the biggest and earliest world preserves on the planet were in Africa. There are some very well established national parks here. This class ends at?
40 after.
Okay, a little bit more. Transportation, challenge anywhere, right? Even here in Minnesota. Getting things around. Roads are great, but harsh, rainy season conditions can turn them into peanut butter, like the one on the top left. It's hard to get around. Public transportation is good in the large cities, right? River systems, either small canoes or barges, are perfect because you don't have to maintain that. There's no money that has to be spent. And then we'll get to this last one. Unfortunately, we end this with conflict. Some of this conflict are legacies from the colonial times. Some of those are external. Some of them are internal old grudges, things like this. But there's still some food insecurity here, right? And you're going to fight over natural resources, or one of those being food. So I would have to say that much of the world is much safer than it has been. There aren't any world wars right now, but there are still some internal conflicts. This is one that's in DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's a huge nation, spans the equator. It has just about everything that you would want. It's got unique things like bonobo chimps, okapis, mountain gorillas. It's got gold, it's got timber resources, it's got great agricultural potential. Wonderful culture. If you go to any museum, there's going to have representations from music, culture, paintings, carvings, etc., dance from the Congo. But Eastern Congo is almost, it's a very troublesome place right now, with a lot of rebels around that particular region kind of hanging out and causing shaky political instability. The capital is Kinshasa over in the west, and it's very hard for them to control everything in the east. How do you address these problems? This is shot from space, right? We look at this and say, this is where people live, right? That's what everyone says, this is where people live. But we know that there is probably not a lot of people in the outback of Australia or in the rainforest, but we know there's people in Africa. It's just that they are not on the electrical grid, not very well anyway. So they're not well represented. How can your economies go forward if you don't even have an electrical grid, which means no lights at night, no electrification, no factories, right? So some of the demographic transitions, right? If you can pulse through as fast as you can, most countries are up in stage 3. So birth rates are coming down, death rates are coming down, you're getting a little bit richer, a little bit better. The UN came out with Millennium Development Goals in 2000, a 15-year plan to get less economically developed countries' basic needs met. 1, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. 4, 5, and 6, child mortality, improve health, HIV/AIDS, and define environmental stability. You can imagine this is across the board, across many different nations. 15 years, they reassessed how are we doing, and unfortunately the red, very low, moderate, low incidence, etc. here. Asia, okay, Africa, sub-Saharan, 1, very high poverty, very large deficit, high hunger, down to 4, 4 and 5, high infant mortality, high mortality, and low access to reproductive health. They could do better. They came back in 15, reassessed the next plan that we're in right now. They, of course, increased the number, and I think a little bit aspirational here is no poverty, 0 hunger. That's a big ask, right? That's a big ask. But this is aspirational, perhaps. So this was 2015, we're now in 2021. So not quite halfway through, but I would hate for us to get to the end of this and have to do another 15 of the same ones again, because no progress has been made. But again, in 15 or 20 years, it's hard to turn back or hard to change some of these, right? You don't turn a battleship on a dime, right? So it's hard to change some of these. But at least it's aspirational. So the UN is very cognizant, I think, of trying to meet some of these goals, especially these for child mortality and infant health. So that's my perspective, Africa in a nutshell, Africa in an hour. All right? You're going to go into this in more detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, this semester. So yeah, thank you for all your comments, and catch you next time.
All right, thank you. Say, if anyone did not sign in, you know your 10 points you do every day, I'm just having you sign your name. So today, sign your name, you'll get your 10 points. Come on, if you got any questions or anything, I'll just leave this here. I think a couple people came in a little late. Thank you.
The European colonizers have caused a lot of problems in different countries in Africa and Egypt that sadly are still like around today. It's like even like the terms like that people still.
Oh yeah, you can just do this stuff. You know the questions we do. You can just do it and send it to me. So you need email me what date you didn't come, and I will look up what we did. And you can just email it to me. Just the daily thing. Oh, thank you.
And nothing too major?
No, just the daily thing that we do. Let me think of what else. You know, again, it depends on the day, so email me, I'll look it up. Sure. We'll figure it out.
Thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate the lecture.
Pleasure. Yeah, thanks for your comments.
See you in there.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm Joe, by the way.